Hi, Alta Vista Cougars, and welcome to our very first virtual author visit. Normally, we're gathered together in the cafeteria. You guys are sitting on the floor and getting to watch people. And I think right now you're probably a lot more comfortable than when you're sitting on the floor in the cafeteria. Every other time we do an author's visit, Mrs. Finley is the person who sets these up and she introduces our authors. And so we want to keep with that same tradition. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her and let her introduce our guests and we can get started.
Hi, Alta Vista. I'm Mrs. Finley, and I'm really excited to have two very special guests, two authors. We have Dorothy Hurst and Pam Berkman. Both of them are here to tell you about their new book entitled Bobo's Cave of Gold. Many of you in the fourth grade are learning about the gold rush, have a unit there. And so this book is very timely and connected to your curriculum. And for those of you in fifth grade, you've been through that unit, so this will be familiar. And then for all kindergarten through fourth, this is a great series of books that will be exciting for you. You have an opportunity to purchase these books through Hickleby's, and the authors will sign those copies. So your parents can do that through the link that's on the Alta Vista website. I just wanted to let you know that. You can let them know. They also are the authors of Filigree's Midnight Ride. And the authors' names again are Dorothy Hurst and Pam Berkman. And we're so happy to have you here at Alta Vista. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm Pam.
And I'm Dorothy.
And we have been friends for a long time. And we're also writers. And I just wanted to say that we are sitting here in our homes, zooming in from our rooms, just like you are. And we are just so delighted that we are able to do it this way. We were so excited when we found out that we could do this virtually. So as I said, we've been pals and writers for a long time. And a few years ago, we decided we wanted to try to write something together. And we both love dogs and we both love history. So we decided to write some stories about historical events that are told from the point of view of dogs, of dog characters. And that ended up becoming our series, which is called At the Heels of History. And we're going to read to you from the newest book in that series. And then we're going to try to show you an activity that's about how we write together, how we write a book together between the two of us. And maybe that's something you'll want to do on your own or with a friend later on.
Right. And we're so happy to be here. And thank you to Mrs. Finley and Miss Bailey for inviting us. This is the second book in the series. It's Bobo's Cave of Gold, and it's set during the California Gold Rush. And the California Gold Rush started in 1848 when people came from all over the world to try to find gold in California. And these people were called prospectors. And something that's really interesting is that most people who came to find gold did not get rich or even really make enough money to live on. And the people who ended up making money were the people who sold things to the people who came looking for gold, who sold them shovels and pans and food and all of that. That's something we thought was really interesting when we were looking for this.
Okay. So Bobo's Cave of Gold is about a dog who was all alone in the California foothills in the gold country until she met a boy named Sheng. And Sheng was with his father and his uncle, but he was pretty lonely too, because there weren't really any other kids around or anything like that. And they came from China. They were Chinese prospectors. And like many families who were prospecting, they had a lot of trouble finding enough gold to support themselves, to make enough money to get the things that they needed. And for them, it was particularly hard because they also had to pay something that was called the foreign miners tax. And that was a tax that was specifically targeted to Chinese prospectors. And so, of course, was quite unjust and unfair.
And the story is what happens when Sheng and Bobo have to find a lot of money and a lot of gold really, really quickly because of something that Bobo did. And so they go searching for a legendary treasure, and they meet bears and they meet rattlesnakes, They have to cross a dangerous river, and they have all sorts of adventures. We're going to read to you from part of Bobo's Cave of Gold. Now, if we were there with you, we would be asking you for some help with sound effects, and we'd like to do that anyway. Even though we can't hear you, it's really nice for us to know you're doing that. So we're going to practice. There are going to be 3 sound effects. I'm going to hold up a piece of paper with a sound effect, and when I'm holding it up, you can make the noise, and then when I put it down, stop. And Pam will be helping out with that too. So the very first one is going to be a squawk like a bird makes. So let's try a squawk. Squawk, 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 squawk. Excellent. And the next one, you know how like when you accidentally step on your dog's paw and it yelps or it's frightened or something? So the second one is a yelp. Yep. Excellent. And the third one we all know is when a dog barks. Great. I can hear all of you, even though I can't hear you. I know you're all doing really good sound effects. All right. So now I'm going to read from chapter 2 of Bobo's Cave of Gold. And what happened right before this is that Bobo, whose name at the beginning of the book is Sage, that's the name her pack gives her, she was kicked out of her pack because she wouldn't steal food from an old man who was hungry. And so her pack leader got really, really mad at her and told her she was too weak and too soft. And so she's been all by herself for a long time until one day something happens. And I'll show you what Bobo looks like. There's Bobo. And here's part of her story. And she's called Sage right now. Sage lifted her head and then set it down again. She was curled up in a little hollow on the hillside. She was hungry, but didn't feel like looking for food. Since she had been sent away from the pack, the moon had shrunk from a full circle to a sliver, then grown full again. She'd wandered the hills alone. She'd eaten whatever scraps she could find. Now she didn't even feel like doing that. Nobody cares if I'm alive, she woofed aloud. Mopey, miserable mutt, someone said from behind her. She heard a squawk and a whistle. Squawk! 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 Excellent. Then something pulled her tail. She yelped and turned to look. No one was there. She stood and turned the other way. She didn't see anything there either. Hey, Sage barked. Then something poked her on the shoulder. Then it nipped her tail. It jabbed her back left paw. Sage chased her tail around and around until she didn't know which end of her was the back and which was the front. She ran out of the hollow. A bird landed in front of her. It was smaller than a hawk or a vulture, more like the size of a dove, but it had a sleek dome-shaped head and a short hooked beak. It was drenched in as many colors as Shang knew there was in the world. She sniffed it. It bit her nose. Stop that, Sage yelped. Excellent. And you can see there's a bird biting her nose. Not until you come with me, the bird said. No, Sage said. Leave me alone. Stubborn, silly, sad-faced dog, the bird trilled. I've been watching you. The strange bird took flight. He flapped his wings around Sage's ears. He beat her at her head until she ran down the hill and across a grassy stretch of land. He chased her toward a stream. Sage jumped over some rocks and splashed on her belly into the water. Stubborn, silly, soggy dog, the bird whistled. We're here. Look. There was a boy standing in the stream near a big buckeye tree. He wore loose trousers, a loose shirt, and a straw hat with a curved brim. A rope of hair trailed down his back. He was trying to move a big rock from the bottom of the stream with a shovel. He frowned with concentration. His shoulders were bent. It looked like he was carrying a large invisible weight on his back. He moved awkwardly like a half-grown puppy. He's big for his age, the bird said. His father and uncle need him to help as much as he can, but he's only a chick, the only one for miles and miles around. I've flown as far as I can to look for one. His name is Shang, and he's 10 years old. He comes from a place far away from here called China. He flew to the boy named Shang and landed on his hat. The boy didn't look up. Stop that, Choi Hung, Shang said to the bird. There could be gold under this rock. I just have to get to it. We need to get as much as we can. Brought a dog? Choi Hung said to Shang in human words. Brought a dog? Sage had never heard an animal speak like humans spoke. Shang looked and saw Sage flopped there in the water. He put his shovel down on the bank of the stream. Sage got to her paws. Sage and the boy watched each other for a moment. Then very slowly, Shang raised his hand. Sage tensed her legs. Was he going to throw something at her to make her leave? Choi Hung flew back to her. He poked Sage on the head. Don't keep doing that, she barked. Woof! 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 Excellent. Cowardly, cowering, craven dog, Choi Hung responded. You need a friend? He needs a friend. All he thinks about is trying to find enough gold for his family. Go. Sage took a step toward the boy. He held out his hand, palm down like a paw. She took another step and another. When they were close enough to touch, she sniffed his hand. Then she licked it. He tasted like stream water. Hello, girl, he said. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken kindly to Sage. She wagged her tail weakly. She looked down at the rock in the stream bed. Shang needed help. She pushed at the rock with her front paws. Shang grinned. He picked up his shovel and slid it under the rock. Together, they worked it loose. Shang turned the rock over. No gold, he said. His shoulders slumped. He dropped his shovel on the rocks. But thank you for helping. He ruffled Sage's ears. You know, most of my family is gone, he said. It's just father and uncle and me. Most of my friends back home are gone too. He wiped his sleeve over his eyes, but he didn't cry. You look like you're all by yourself, he said. Do you feel lonely and sad too? Maybe you could stay with us. You're the color of gold. You could be Bobo, a little treasure. I bet you'll bring us luck. Sage almost shook with hope. I'll be tough enough this time, she told herself. I won't be too soft. So that's how Shang and Bobo meet. And Sage becomes Bobo, which means little treasure, and she finds a family again. And everything is okay until one day she goes to town and she meets a bear. And that's when everything starts to go wrong. And that's what happens in the rest of the book.
So Dorothy and I had to find a way to write this book together. And here's the thing, there are as many ways to write as there are writers. There's no one right or wrong way. And the way I write is I like to figure out the plot and action first and kind of lay all that out and then kind of fit in the characters and the smaller events and that kind of thing. Now, how do you write, Dor?
So I usually start with the character and I get an idea about a character in a situation and then I write for a while and that's how I find the story. And then I'll do some outlining and then I'll go back and I'll write and find more of the story and then outline. And I go back and forth that way till I find the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty different. And we needed to figure out a way to let each other know what was in each of our heads. Because for as long as we've known each other, we still can't read each other's minds. So we had, and it was kind of a challenge. So we came up with something where we would just write down every idea we had. And Dor, do you want to show them what that looked like? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was the one for Bobo's Cave of Gold. You see, there's all kinds of things on there. We didn't use everything. Where's the mule there, Dorothy?
There's a mule. There's number 3 here, which means we really wanted to use a mule, but we didn't use the mule. Mm-hmm. Let's see, we thought there would be a big dog, but we ended up with a medium-sized dog. Mm-hmm. And then we had a lake of gold, which turned out to be something else.
Yeah.
In the book.
Exactly. So now, does that look clean and polished and neat, Dorothy?
It does not look clean and polished and neat, Pam.
That's pretty messy. So everyone, when you start writing something, remember, there's nothing wrong if it looks all messy and crazy. Most things do when you start out. Okay, later on you polish it. You know, like when we wrote our story and gave it to our editor, it was polished. Like that's kind of like when you turn it into your teacher. But oh my goodness, no, things are very messy and rough in the beginning. So we had a system where we had these numbers and votes and things that we would use and kind of figure out which things we liked the best and so on. But we're going to change that a little bit, because there's so many of us and because we're, you know, in a lot of different places and so on. And we're going to try an activity to show you how we wrote together. And again, maybe you guys might want to do this on your own and with friends. We're going to break the book into some different pieces, which is how we approached it. So, and feel free to chime in with this if you want to, even though we can't hear you. So you all know that a story has a beginning and a middle and an end. I'm sure your teachers have talked to you about that. And there's some other elements of a story. For example, pretty much every story has a main character, right? Who is our story about? If it's a Stink Moody book, it's about Stink. It's Magic Treehouse, it might be about Jack and Annie. If it's about Olivia, it's about Olivia. If it's about Star Wars, it's about Luke Skywalker, or maybe Rey, right? Or maybe Anakin. But so there's a main character. They usually want something they want to be or have or get to. Luke and Rey want to be Jedis. Something's in their way. Because if they just wanted something and they got it, there wouldn't be much of a story, right? So there's usually some challenge or obstacle they have to overcome. And then what do? How do they handle that? How do they get through that obstacle or challenge? And then what happens in the end? What's our resolution? How do things end up in the story? So what we're going to do is have a few ideas, maybe about 3 each for each of these things. And as we go through, we're going to choose them and make sort of an outline of a story. And what we would usually do if we were with all of you guys is we might kind of call on you and in the end vote. But I think what we're going to do is Dorothy and I will have some. And if you have any thoughts about these things, you could go ahead and put it in the comments and Mrs. Finley can let us know if you have some. So we can get it started, and we'll wait a little bit after we first say it because we think there's a delay with it streaming on YouTube. So you guys will need a few seconds. So I'll just throw out something about who our story could be about, which is a flying teacup. And
maybe it could be a mouse. See if we any suggestions from our listeners.
It could be about a cougar, since we're Alta Vista Cougars.
Oh, excellent.
Cougar. Okay. Anything from the classes? Not so far?
They're not there yet.
Okay. Should we wait a few more seconds or move on to the next one?
I think we can wait a few seconds.
Okay.
And one thing we want to say is, Pam and I always know this, and we always say this, there's no such thing as a bad idea. There's sometimes an idea that doesn't work or that we don't use, but we never say something to each other like, oh, that's a stupid idea or that's a bad idea, because even if we don't use it, we might use it some other time. And also, if you guys suggest things and we don't use them, don't feel bad because we can't use everything.
I get a bird. I have a bird.
A bird. All right, let's go with a bird. Okay.
And I have another one, wolves.
Whoa, wolves, someone after Dorothy's own heart. Dorothy loves wolves and has written books about wolves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yo-yo. It says
A yo-yo. Okay. So let's stop there. So what shall we use? Let's see, a flying teacup, a mouse, a cougar, a bird, wolves, or a yo-yo. What do you think, Dorothy?
I'm torn between the cougar and the yo-yo.
I'm torn between the cougar and the yo-yo too.
Well,
could it be a cougar with a yo-yo?
I think it's a cougar with a yo-yo.
Okay. And again, if we don't choose your idea, that doesn't mean it was a bad idea. Hold on to it. Maybe you'll want to write your own story about that. Okay.
And sometimes it comes up later. So we'll have something we don't use at the beginning and it comes up later. So there could be birds or wolves or a flying teacup later in the story, or you guys can write those stories.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo. What did that cougar with the yo-yo want?
Okay, so I have
Mhm.
a turnip,
A turnip. Okay.
a clock,
A clock.
a camera,
A camera. Okay,
a watch.
let's take one more.
Oh, I have Pluto.
Wants Pluto. Okay. All right.
And it can also be it can also be like somewhere they want to go or something they want to do. It can be just about anything.
And I have Nerf guns.
Nerf guns. Okay. Oh my goodness. Those are such
Good
wonderful
ideas.
ideas. Every last one of them. Oh, okay. Gosh, I love a turnip. I love a clock because maybe he or she wants to time their yo-yo tricks.
Uh-huh.
Camera, maybe to take pictures. Pluto, gosh, to go to Pluto. Nerf guns. I can hardly decide here.
I think at this point I might close my eyes and like pick one. They're
Okay,
also
let's
good.
do that. I'm gonna close my eyes and just like run my finger over the screen and see what it ends up on.
Okay.
I ended up on Nerf guns.
All right.
Okay. Once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo, and more than anything, this cougar wanted some Nerf guns. So I think you guys are starting to think ahead according to what's on the screen. So that's great. So what's a reason that the cougar might not be able to have the Nerf guns? Too expensive? Their mom or dad won't let them have them? What else could it be?
Maybe the stores are closed.
What a wonderful one. Maybe the stores are closed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, Dorothy, I'm liking that one a lot.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit. Well, let's wait a little bit for their.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Some of them are still saying the same things from the last.
Okay.
There are a lot. And all these ideas can be used for something.
Here we go. They don't have money.
Okay. They don't have money. Mm-hmm.
Mom says no.
Mm-hmm.
A book was in the way.
A book. Okay.
Okay.
Should we stop there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo. The cougar wanted some Nerf guns, but couldn't have them because they were too expensive. Their parents or mom wouldn't let them have one. The stores are closed, or a book was in the way. So something they're kind of expensive and don't have money is kind of, I think,
Kind of the same thing. Yeah.
And parents won't let them have, and mom says no is pretty much the same. Just mom saying no. And the stores are closed, or a book was in the way.
And we have a clarification. Maybe her mom said that they were too violent.
Oh, mom said they were too violent. Okay. Mom says they're too violent. Okay.
So that brings up something. So sometimes there's never a bad idea, but sometimes one of us will say, that makes me feel kind of bad because I feel like it's too violent. And then we can change it a little bit. So if one of us said that, we might change the Nerf gun a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Which doesn't mean that anyone's idea, that they need to change their idea. There's nothing wrong with the idea, but we just decide, are we comfortable with that? And is that about right for, the kids who are going to read our books and so on. But so we'll talk about that. And like I said, we might change it a little so that we feel comfortable writing it.
Yeah, we might say it's a Nerf ball.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see, what's a reason here? The stores are closed is really hitting me because we're all going through that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can go with that. So once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo, and that cougar wanted some Nerf guns more than anything, but the stores were closed. So they couldn't get the Nerf guns. And so what do they do about that?
Hey, and Pam, I think just because we raised the issue of maybe the Nerf guns are too violent, I'm going to say or Nerf balls.
Okay.
So that
depending on how you want to do it.
Depending on how you want to do it. Yeah.
Right. So Nerf guns or Nerf balls, but the stores were closed. Okay. So what did they do about it? Did they make their own Nerf guns?
They could borrow from a friend.
Yeah, someone said borrow from a friend.
Oh, great. Okay. Wait. It's hard.
Anybody else? Maybe they make cookies instead.
Someone said they stayed in quarantine.
Oh yeah, staying in quarantine. Yeah, it's kind of like waiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And they could make cookies instead or borrow from a friend while they're staying in quarantine.
Um, I'm thinking borrow from a friend. That's my thought.
I kind of like that they make cookies instead or make their own,
Oh wow.
because
Okay,
that's
so
what
let's
kind of
see.
what I've been doing is making stuff.
Okay. Well,
What do
how
you think?
about
Which one of those do you like better, making cookies or making their own?
can they do both? Can they make their own
Sure.
and make cookies too?
Yeah, I like that
Okay.
idea.
They learn to make both those things. Okay.
They're saying order online.
Okay. Order online. That's a good idea.
That is a good
All
idea.
good ideas. Okay. So I think we'll stick with this. So once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo. The cougar wanted some Nerf guns or Nerf balls. So the cougar decided to make some and make some cookies too.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
Can't
what?
have enough cookies.
That's right.
That is
Just
true.
checking our time. Okay, 2:27. I think we're doing pretty well. And so what happens in the end? How does the cougar make the Nerf guns and make the cookies? And what happens after that? So what happens after that? In the end, how does it go? Does the cougar sit down to a cookie feast? Does the cougar use the Nerf guns to shoot cookies to all their neighbors who can't come out? Anything else?
I like the idea of sharing the cookies. That sounds like a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Someone said mom helps them.
Oh, yeah, mom could definitely help
Mhm.
make the cookies. And the
Definitely.
Nerf guns. Absolutely.
So yeah, I love the cougar sharing the cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And they could also save their Nerf guns or Nerf balls for later on after
Mhm.
shelter in place is over, so they can enjoy the cookies now and
Right.
playing with their friends later. Best
Mhm.
of
Oh, I
everything.
like that later.
Yeah, I like that
love
too. They could have the cookies now and save the Nerf guns and Nerf balls for later. Yeah,
I love that.
I'm liking
Okay.
that a lot too. Okay, so do we want to get sharing the cookies? Sit down to a cookie feast and share the cookies with other people. Maybe leave the cookies on other people's doorsteps or something, Dorothy?
I like that.
Okay.
And get the Nerf gun later. Okay.
Someone says that they ate too many cookies and they had a tummy ache.
Oh.
Oh, that's a pretty good ending, though, I must say.
Well, and that's what's interesting
that.
because that would take the story to the next place. So they ate the cookies and then they had a tummy ache, and that's the next part of the story.
Mhm. So then what did they do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have once upon a time, there was a cougar with a yo-yo. The cougar wanted some Nerf guns or Nerf balls. So the cougar decided to make some and make some cookies too. So the cougar saved the Nerf gun or Nerf balls for later and had a cookie feast and shared the cookies.
Cookies.
As you see, you don't have to type
You
very
don't have to
well
type well to be a writer.
and Dorothy and I don't. So, and shared the cookies with their friends.
So then we have a story,
Right.
the beginnings of a story.
So you guys can see that that's actually kind of the bare bones of a story, right? It's the basic plot and the basic beginning and middle and end. And what Dorothy and I like to do after that is to start asking more questions like who and how and why. For example, who helps the cougar make the cookies? Maybe it's mom. We had that idea. Maybe it's some other people. Is there anyone who doesn't want the cougar to make the cookies or make the Nerf guns? There are all kinds of ideas about that. And how do they make the cookies? How do they make the guns? I'd like to know how to make a Nerf gun at home. What kind of cookies do they make? Why did the cougar want the Nerf guns and the cookies? Were they hungry? Do they just love chocolate chip cookies and haven't had me for a while? How does that work? So we keep asking about all those details. And eventually we have enough there to write a story. And we might also add details about sense and sound and touch. And I'm sure your teachers have talked to you about those things too. And then we revise, and we revise a lot. You know, our books, we revised those 13, 14 times before we gave them to our publishers.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that. And again, so don't worry if your first version of a story isn't perfect. You know, we
Right.
revise a lot. All professional writers revise a lot. And so then we have a story. And so we hope that you all can do something like that. Now, if you would like to write something like that, either with yourself or a friend on Zoom or on the phone or anything, and you want to send those to us, please do. You can send them to your teachers or Ms. Bailey or whoever at your school is the right person. They can get them to us. We'd love to see them. So to please do that. And we'll send you this, we'll kind of clean this up and we'll send you this too, in case you want to send it around to all the people who are listening now.
Yeah, Cougars, if you work on the story and you send it to me, maybe we can include it in some of our newsletters through now and the end of the year. So
Great idea.
Great idea. Yeah.
We'd love to publish everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was when I was first published, was in a school, a book at school.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay. Okay, well, let's see. I think, okay, so we have not quite 10 minutes.
For any questions.
For anything anybody wants to ask. Maybe while we're waiting for the comments to come in, I know there's a few questions people almost always ask us.
Mm-hmm.
One is, how many books have we written? And one is how long it takes us to write a book. So Dorothy, how many books have you written?
So I wrote 3 books before this, and they were about wolves, and they were for older kids and grown-ups. And then that's before this.
So Dorothy's written actually 6 books altogether, because there were the 3 about wolves. And then there's Filigree's Midnight Ride, the first book in our series, Bobo's Cave of Gold, which is the second book in our series, which just came out. And then there's one called Minch's Night on Ellis Island, which is the third book in our series, which is coming out in August. And that's about Ellis Island and a dog who stows away on a boat heading there, a boat from Lebanon, to find her family. And I've written 2 books of short stories that are for grown-ups, and then these 3 books in the At the Heels of History series. And how about how long it takes us to write a book, Dorothy?
So it took us from the time we got the idea till the time we turned it into our editor. Filigree's Midnight Ride took us about a year, because we were figuring out the whole story. And then the next 2 took us a little less time. But the first book I ever wrote, Promise of the Wolves, took me 6 years. And then my second book took me 2 years, and my third book took me 1 year. And so it changes, but sometimes you get, if it's a shorter book, or you get a really great idea that happens quickly, it can be faster than that. But I write lots and lots of drafts to make it. How about you, Pam?
I mean, a year sounds about right to me, 1 to 2 years, but like you say, it can depend on how long or short it is, and how well I thought of how well the idea falls into place, when you have it. So
yeah, and a lot of times I'll get an idea for a book, and then I just think about it for a long time before I'm ready to write.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question.
Okay.
What is your favorite book you wrote?
Oh, I love them all.
It's just like a child, right?
Right. Yeah, they're just things I love about all of them for different reasons.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I honestly, it's such a great question. I think I couldn't say. I mean, in the At the Heels of History series, I love every one of the books there. There's 3 now. And I love my short stories too. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess we can't answer that one. Sorry, it was a great question.
What about this series? What do you love most about this series? Maybe you could answer that.
I love looking at something we think we know about from another point of view. So the fact that we have history, and then we have the dogs, and then it's 2 things. I also just love that, the stories are about love and friendship and loyalty.
Yeah.
How about you, Pam?
And I love that too. I love that we try to tell a story from a point of view someone might not have thought of before, or a point of view that's a little less well known, and that we sometimes find things that aren't what people think about those times. Like in Filigree's Midnight Ride, we found a lot of things people think about Paul Revere's Midnight Ride actually aren't really true. And some of the true stuff is really just as interesting. So I like things like that. And I like writing from the point of view of a dog who's, kind of like some of us, in that maybe people aren't paying attention to what they think or what they're trying to tell them. And they usually can't, they have some difficulty controlling the things around them. And so I like our dogs actually do try to take matters into their own hands, and they face some things in trying to do that and trying to get the humans around them to listen and to try to express to them what needs to happen and so on. So I really like that. We're kind of talking from the point of view of a dog who might have some difficulty in being understood. I like that a lot.
And how do you do research for your books? Because these ones have some history in them, right? And so how do you do that research?
Well, I was going to say we read a lot of books and we research things, and we also go places. Like we actually went to the Gold Country, and we went around to some of the sites that we talk about and some of the areas that that Bobo is in, and we took notes on what did the trees look like and what kinds of vegetation were there, and all kinds of things. We went to, a replica of a miner's cabin and saw what that was like. And then we read a lot of books in this one. We read a lot about the experience of Chinese prospectors who came, and there's some wonderful things. There's songs they wrote about how much they missed their homes and things like that. So we looked at a lot of those things to get some ideas of how they might be feeling. And we would try to feel things in the way a dog might. And Dorothy, do you want to talk about that? How different things are important to a dog and how things look different to them?
Well, I also want the other thing we did is that I want to say two things about research is that we also talked to people. So there was people at the Paul Revere House in Boston. You can actually go when you can go places again to Sutter's Mill, the place where gold was first discovered, and we went there, and we went to and we talked to all sorts of people. The other thing is, like, when you're researching and writing, sometimes what you research will change the story. And so you think you're researching one thing and then the story changes. That happened when we found out some new things about Ellis Island as well. And yeah, so we also did a lot of research about dogs. And you always want to think about not just like, so dogs like perceive the world differently. If they smell things and they hear things as instead of just seeing things. And then also you think about what's important to a dog. So like what's the most important to a dog is different from us. Like anyone who has dogs know they're always thinking about where the food is. And then being part of their pack. I mean, dogs are all about being part of their pack. And when we would go to places like the Gold Country or Ellis Island, we would get down low on our hands and knees to see what everything seemed like to a dog. So those were some of the things that we did.
Okay, I have a few more questions. So they want to know, when did you become friends?
We became friends. We worked at
22 years ago, I think.
Was it? Oh my Lord. And we worked at a publishing house together. We just worked together in the same office.
And then what happened was that we got together because there were a group of people who were writing together and who were all writers, and said, hey, who else likes to write stories? And so we were in a group of people who like to write stories, and that's how we became friends.
Okay, good. And then people want to know, how many books do you think you'll write? Like, will you write more together in this series? Do you have any plans for additional books? And do you know how many you may want to write in the series? A lot of times the students like to know if there's going to be more in the series.
Yeah, we don't know that yet. We hope so. We would love to write a lot more books in the series and a lot more books together from dogs or cats' perspective.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we know there'll be at least 3 because that third one's coming out. And we'll certainly write any more that we can. It's kind of up to the publisher about how many they want in this series. So we're waiting to hear from them about how many they might want after the third one.
Okay. And then someone wants to know, what are your favorite animal? What's your favorite animal? Are dogs your favorite animal, or is there another animal?
I would say dogs for me. I would have to. I like cats. Cats are very nice animals.
I have to say it honestly is hard for me to choose. I think I've always really liked lions. Lions have always been a favorite animal of mine.
And I love wolves too, but wolves and dogs are kind of the same general area.
Yeah.
I mean, I love dogs. I love all animals. Yeah, I know. Obviously, or I couldn't have written this too, but.
Okay. All right.
So I think are we at time or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this was so much fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today at Alta Vista. We've really enjoyed hearing you read your book and talk more about what inspired you to write it. And thank you to the students for coming and watching our first virtual author visit. And please go to Hickleby's and go ahead and buy this book, because it's so you can find out more about it and learn more about what the dogs find out in the Gold Rush. So,
And if you
We'll
want
include some links in tomorrow's newsletter too, so that way make it easy for parents.
Right. You can get it online. You can get it online, right?
order them
Hickleby's, yeah.
online,
Mhm.
and they will be signed by you, and
Mhm.
then they will receive them. They can either order them, if they order $25 or more, they will be delivered to their home, or they can pick up from Hickleby's as well. So thank you.
Sounds
Great.
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks
so much for having
everybody.
us. Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you guys all for joining us. We're so happy you could
Send
be
us your
here.
stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.